Hi, everyone. It's Martina Kwan, and I'm so excited to welcome you to our Extreme Confidence and Ironclad Mindset Roundtable, consisting of the leadership team of SRS Collective, She Rises Studios. So I'm really excited to be here with these wonderful ladies. So I'm going to just introduce myself first, and we'll go around the room. So I'm Martina Kwan. I'm a 3-time champion race car driver, a 2-time international best-selling author, a mom of 2 beautiful girls, as well as a war survivor. And I'm a champion mindset coach and the CEO of DK Racing School, as well as my Daring to Do Different coaching business. And through my Extreme Confidence Mastermind women's retreats, one-on-one and group coaching, I help empower women to get rid of their self-doubt and their negative thinking so that they can really find their extreme confidence, purpose, and passion again. So I'm really excited for everyone to be here. So I'm going to ask Melanie to introduce herself first. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me along. So I am a Melanie Greenhouse from Collective Wisdom Coaching and Consulting, and I'm a leading evidence-based neuro coach and women's transformation activator. And I do that by teaching women how to weave together the science of achievement with the art of fulfillment to create an absolutely extraordinary life and develop a more caring, calm, and compassionate relationship with themselves. You're able to do that when you learn and you understand how to leverage your emotional brain, and it really helps you come into more alignment with what you really want and value in your life. And it actually helps you just put the shame, the blame, and the guilt to the side a little bit more and really step out of overwhelm. So absolutely pleased to be here, Martina. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Okay, wonderful, Melanie. And we're so excited that you're here all the way from Canberra, Australia. So welcome. Okay, how about Heather? Where are you? And let's hear about you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Stokes Benton. I am in Tampa, Florida, and I am a wife and a mother and a business owner. I also am partnered with She Rise Studios and on the leadership team with all of you wonderful women. And I help women understand that they can put aside their limiting beliefs so that they can have financial wellness, that they can learn how to not just make money, but control money, grow money, and change the narrative for their children and their families, and really start building towards generational growth and change.
That sounds amazing. Welcome, Heather.
Yeah.
And how about Leslie?
Hey everyone, I'm Leslie Gaudet, and I'm coming to you from sunny Sebring, Florida. Well, not so much sunny right now, but I am coming to you from Florida. I am a wife of 27 years. I'm a podcast host. I'm also an international best-selling author. And as well, I'm a self-care specialist for female entrepreneurs who are needing to add more self-care into their life and business to support them so that they stay sharp, focused, and wake up with more energy and intention to tackle their daily activities with confidence.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So you're pretty close to each other in Florida.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And there's a huge race that goes on at Sebring. So that's wonderful. Okay, how about Michele? Welcome. And where are you? And tell us about yourself.
Oh, Martina, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being on this roundtable discussion with you ladies. Hello, everyone. I'm Michele Meza with Luxy Coaching and Consulting. I am a transformational coach and a branding and marketing strategist. And so I help women and entrepreneurs transform their mindsets and build 6-figure brands through content curation and digital footprint and strategies.
Wonderful.
And I'm in
Thank you.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. I forgot to include that.
Okay, wonderful. That's great. Love it. So our topic today is something that I'm really interested in, which is, especially for women, extreme confidence and ironclad mindset. And a lot of times women have trouble. They might be so confident in some areas, but not in others. And I think it also depends on the time of life. So 7 years ago, in a different situation, I wasn't as confident as I am now. But typically throughout my life, I've been pretty fearless. I lived in Beirut, Lebanon during the war, and I really credit that experience, those 2 years of listening to the bombs and rockets and explosions to my fearlessness today as a person, as a woman. And so a lot of being extremely confident or confident in general, it starts in the mind. And a lot of times as women, we're told what to be or what not to be. So Leslie, I wanted to start with you first and to kind of tell us, why is it okay for a woman to be emotional?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, we're born with emotions. So to me, it's like to not allow ourselves to embrace that is really robbing ourselves of having that experience in life. We have the emotions of sadness, of course, happiness, maybe we have those anger, anxiety, but those emotions allow us to tap into who we are and to learn from that. So to me, I believe that it's okay to be emotional, but not to live in the emotion. So allow yourself to go through something, allow yourself to experience it, and then learn from that.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. No, I think it's great because, a lot of times people say, oh, women are too emotional, but I have to agree with you. I think it's really important to feel the feelings so we can get past the feelings, right? Whether it's good or bad, sort of soaking in it for a little bit, allows us to examine it, make it not as impactful and sort of move on. So Heather, I know you specialize in adolescence as well, and we're both moms. And tell us a little bit about confidence building in girls in particular, or our kids.
Right. And I am a mom of girls, like you are a mom of girls, and a lot of us are. And it is very strategic raising girls to be confident, especially when you hit those adolescent years. So we have a 27-year-old, which is my husband's from a previous marriage, but we raised her since she was 5. And she doesn't really refer to me as her stepmom. I don't really refer to my stepdaughter. It's just, this is Hannah. So we went through it once. So we have a 12-year-old that's just getting started on all the fun emotional stuff. I do have a background in psychology and developmental psychology as well as forensic psychology. And so I think the biggest thing for girls is, they are little women and they're trying to find themselves and they're trying to understand all these different feelings that are happening that they didn't have before, and their hormones are raging. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing I think is for them to be heard. They have to know that their voice matters, that it's valued. And those are the same things we want to, we want to know that our voice can be heard, that you're listening, and that you're valued. And so we have to create that safe space at home. And I was just having a conversation earlier tonight with another mom, and her daughter had sent her a very disturbing text message from school, and she's like, I had to not react and try to be the cool mom so that I knew she would send me messages like this in the future, right? And so I didn't want to react. I wanted to make sure, she knew she could come to me. And it is so important that sometimes we want to react because we naturally want to protect them. And I know Michelle's a mom of girls too. You just want to jump in with that mother bear, and protect. But sometimes we're doing more harm by doing that, by not just allowing them to have the emotion, allowing them to tell you the entire story. And being that, knowing their voice matters. So growing up, it was funny because I just wrote a book called Women Disruptors that's coming out next week. And it was a really hard chapter for me to write because I don't consider myself a disruptor. But I work and have always worked in male dominated worlds, a lot like yourself, Michele. And so just by nature of working in those worlds, we are disruptors, right? So, and then this, a week ago or 2 weeks ago now, my 12-year-old daughter wrote a book and she released it. And we had an event this week with, some of her peers and stuff like that. And some of them were just in such shock. And as I stood back and I looked at her, she's normally very kind, and she is very kind, but very humble and stuff like that. But I thought she's a disruptor too, because it's not normal for her to be doing what she's doing. But she wanted to do it. She stepped out and we supported her. So it's always been really important to myself and my husband that we'll support whatever they want to do. I mean, obviously, as long as it's not destructive, but allowing them to choose, right? And I think when you allow them to choose, they'll surprise you and make the better choice when they feel like you've sat down and listened, you've heard them, and you've valued what they say, even if you don't agree with it, and maybe the outcome isn't what they want, at least that you gave them that time to speak, because we're not always going to give in, right? We're not always going to agree. But it was always important in my house growing up. My mom left home when she was 13 years old and decided to make her own path and her own way. So her being a very hardworking and determined person, she was very adamant about us having a voice and being heard. And so I think that is one of the biggest things, because my 12-year-old does battle a lot with self-esteem issues, surprisingly enough, because she's on stage at least 3 nights a week, because she loves to perform. But when it's not a character, and when it's not a song, and when it's really just her, and she's vulnerable to her peers, there is that side. So I think listening is the biggest thing you can do.
Yeah, that's so true. I have the same policy with my kids. Is I want them to feel comfortable coming to me no matter what it is. And so just having an open door policy makes them feel like they can tell me anything, and I don't react. So listening and sort of trying to understand and taking a deep breath before we do respond is so important in any situation. And for girls growing up today, it's extremely tough. You know, there's a lot of comparison going on when people look at the TikToks or the Snapchats, and everyone's using filters, and there's sort of expectations. And to me, I try and teach them that being unique, being a disruptor, being, taking charge, and no matter what you want to do, that's what makes you beautiful. That's what makes you a beautiful person, and people will respect it. So that's wonderful, Heather. Thank you. So now, Michele, so mindset, everyone sort of talks about it as it's a buzzword. And so why don't you tell us, number one, what is mindset? And number two, what makes for an unstoppable mindset?
Yeah, and that mindset is a hot topic. It is a buzzword going around with everyone of all ages, even children. You hear about mindset, it's in your mind, thoughts. And so what a mindset is a state of mind. Like, there is a condition of your mind, and it could be a fixed mindset. It could be an abundance mindset. It could be a good mindset, a bad mindset. And so I think people really don't understand what it actually is. And so it is directly related to our thought process. So, as we think, we are, and so we do. And that is, it begins and ends with your thoughts. And so as a mindset coach, and as a mom, I'm a single mom of 2 girls myself. And so what I tell them all the time is watch what you say to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention to how you think about yourself, not how others perceive you, but it deals on an individual level. And so once we realize, okay, so mindset is a thought process, right? It is a condition, a state of mind. And then you go into, okay, well, what is an unstoppable mindset? How do I get this level of thinking to where I can do anything, right? And so one of the things that, I work with clients a lot, they come to me and they are in this pattern, this negative thought process, and it's dealing a lot with irrational beliefs, right? They're focused on their circumstance. And so while it's okay to look at your circumstance, you don't live there, you don't unpack there. And I think that's important for having an unstoppable mindset, because you have to think, okay, yes, I have to face things head on. We hear the term fake it till you make it, faith it till you make it, but we need to face it until we make it. Because when you face things head on, everything, it's like peeling back layers of the onion. And once you peel back those layers, you uncover unique things about yourself and about others and about your circumstance, about your perspective on those types of things. And so when you are faced with difficulties. It's really easy to have an unstoppable mindset when you're on top of the mountain, but it's when you're in the valleys is where we all struggle. And so facing your fears, facing whatever is ahead of you, and not overthinking it, because that digs deep into self-sabotage. We can absolutely talk ourselves out of things, out of our future, out of our goals. And so once we face our fears and get everything out on the table, then we can decide, okay, yes, you know what, I can do this. And so it goes deeper into how you talk to yourself. So then it goes back to our state of mind. And so that's why it's so critical to have an unstoppable mindset. And a lot of people just get stuck before they reach their potential.
That's wonderful. It's so true. And it's so important to, as I say, lift the rug up. My parents were parents who anything bad, swept it under the rug. So after a while, and the other analogy is, as we go through life, the luggage just gets heavier and heavier till it's this really heavy thing on your back. So if we open it, we can take some things out and lighten the load. If we look under the rug, we can take some things under there. But if we don't examine it, it's always going to be like a gremlin on our shoulders. So I really, really love that analogy. And the other thing that I really liked what you said is you are what you think. And so there was a experiment done by a Japanese man called Matsuro Emoto. And it was, he talked to water. And when he said nice things, it's sort of like when you talk to a flower, they blossom, they grow. So when he said nice things, beautiful crystals formed in the water. And when heavy metal or negative things, or I hate you, or Adolf Hitler was said, it turned ugly. So what the point is that our bodies are made mostly of water. So we can change the whatever we say to ourselves. So if somebody else doesn't say, God, I love you, you're beautiful, you're amazing, you're smart, say it to yourself. So look in the mirror in the morning and you can change the narrative in your mind by saying, you know what, you're bloody amazing, Martina, right? So that's like one trick to get that mindset is to tell yourself those things, build yourself up, boost yourself, give yourself the confidence, because we are mostly made out of water. We are what we say and what we believe. And so let's move on to Melanie. And so again, with mindset, it's so easy. With all that said, it's so easy to sort of get into those negative thoughts, right? And it sort of feels like sometimes they spiral, they circle. It's sort of like you're a hamster on a wheel, right? It's so easy for especially the negative thoughts to take hold in your mind. So let's talk about, how do you identify and challenge the negative thoughts? How does that work, Melanie?
Well, it's actually just a really lovely segue from Michelle's thing. And I wanted to let everybody know every morning I have a little practice, and it's tiny because I know we're all busy women, right? But it's literally giving myself a high five in the mirror and just looking at myself eye to eye and just being like, even if I don't necessarily think I've got it, you got this today. So, that's one of those really, it's tiny. I brushed my teeth, high five, out I go. So I love that comment, and talking to people about the water as well. So look, I think what we need to acknowledge is that part of the role of the brain, so a lot of that neuro work that I talk about with people is helping them to understand what's going on in the brain. And its primary function is to keep us alive. Okay, that's what it's doing. So, of course, in order to do that, what does it need to do? It needs to be constantly assessing risk. And I'm looking at Martina with this because I'm like, who's potentially the woman taking the most risks on the racetrack? It's you. And so, but what that means is, and how it correlates in our lives, is that if average brain has around 70,000 thoughts a day, and what the science tells us is that 80% of them are negative. Boom. So what that's telling us is that then we've got a narrative going on that creates what we call automatic negative thoughts, and it causes your brain immediately to release a whole series of chemicals. And as women, I don't think I'm going to be stating anything but the obvious here when I say our whole, neurochemistry is this incredibly sophisticated system that is constantly working. So when you're thinking about our fertility, our pituitary gland, every single day of a normal menstrual cycle, as an example, there's a different, there's a little chemist in there going, oh, she needs this, and they pull it together and then it floods our body. And some days it's great. Some days we feel okay. Some days we get a little cranky, but it's about really acknowledging that not only have we got all of those external factors that feed into our understanding of ourselves and our mindset, as Michele was talking about, but there's also this whole ecosystem going on. So I loved when Heather was talking about, I've got a 12-year-old, and everyone went, oh, yes, understanding that in fact that puberty starts anywhere between 8 to 10. So already the chemists in that little pituitary gland are starting to mix different kind of, reactions to help that young person or that young woman and child become a woman. Yeah. So, and so I loved it actually when you said, Heather, 2 little women. I was like, boom, she's got it. That's exactly that transition period. They're neither a child and they're neither an adult. They're in this really big, and it's tumultuous. And what we know about the brain is that it's actually also the organ that takes the most energy. Of everything that's working, it is the one that is just like it's a supercomputer, and it's just sucking the electricity out of us. So we have to be really aware of that. But what I think is important, and, Michele really touched on it, it's that just because you have a thought and, that actually has nothing to do with whether it's true. So when she was talking about, the circumstances, we are not our circumstances. So thoughts lie. They're just simply a sentence in our head. And we've got the opportunity to check and challenge that. What I wanted to just put across 5 steps really quickly about how to manage those automatic negative thoughts. If you've got the opportunity, write them down. Writing, research tells us, is even if it's not as powerful, writing is powerful. Putting it into our phone or into our laptop, it's okay, but it's not the same processing, theory that's happening. So write it down, label it, actually go, oh, that thought is kind of like, it's the impact it's having is it's making me feel sad. It's like, what is it doing? It's pushing me towards all or nothing thinking. I might be, playing the blame game with myself. I might be overthinking. I loved before when Michele was like, don't overthink. But, so when you start to label it, suddenly you go, oh yeah, I am overthinking that. Pull back. Be a bit kinder to yourself. Be a bit calmer about this. Fortune telling, and mind reading. They're the things that we're automatically doing with this negative thinking. So catch it and check it and challenge it. That the curious question you need to ask yourself is this thought true? Mm-hmm. What evidence do I have that this is true? Or am I actually sitting in my circumstance? And it's really about, and I know a lot of busy women will go, no, not another thing. But it is a little bit about that practicing every day. Yeah, just a moment at the traffic lights, or while you're brushing your teeth, or you're having a shower, to say, hey, how could I be a little bit kinder to myself today? How could I look in the mirror and reflect a bit more self-compassion? Yeah. So I don't want to add to the list, but you know what? If you invest in that, what it gives you back is an abundant amount of energy and confidence and self-belief, and that acknowledgement that it doesn't matter what falls in front of you, you've got this, because you're setting that mindset that Michele was talking about. You're creating that state of mind. So yeah, that's a really, kind of like a micro masterclass.
I love it. So I actually was myself researching ANTS for my Extreme Confidence Mastermind.
Yes.
And so what I found is a children's book that was called Ants, like ants, running around outside. So it's very similar to what you were saying, right? You're going to catch the bug. You're going to put it in a jar. You're going to examine it. And by labeling it, it sort of loses its impact. And then we take it one step further. And so one of my gifts on the retreat is a fly swatter for the ladies. So that some of them have one in the car, one at home. Ants, ANTS, automatic negative thought, boom, I'm not dealing with this now. It's not going to occupy my mind, slap it away. So fly swatters are really useful. So I love what you just said. I think the other thing with women especially is that a lot of times we'll think in black and white. And so either we're successful or we're not successful, we're good or we're bad. And so this is something I learned from the French coach recently in the World Cup in Qatar. So the French team is not taught good or bad, goal, good, no goal, bad, but rather to look at success as a 10-rung ladder. So if you fail at something, you're not automatically bad. It's not like black or white, but you're still at the 9th rung ladder, which is what, 90%? So 100 to 0. So there are a lot of times that you can fail before you actually reach the part that normally as women we're like black or white, good or bad. If we fail suddenly, it's like, oh shoot, I feel so bad. So if you just think of yourself on the 9th rung or the 8th rung, you got it. It's so much easier to climb back to the top if you're at the 8th or 9th rung than if you're all the way at the bottom if you've thought of yourself as a failure. So I just love this mindset stuff. I love it. So let's move on. So Leslie, let's talk about, what is emotional awareness? So you're an expert in emotional awareness. What is it as it relates to mindset?
Yeah, so mindset and emotional awareness, I like geeking out on this stuff. So this is something that really, really is close to my heart. So, but for me with mindset, it means like you've set your mind to believe something. That's what how I look at it, because it's the beliefs. And the way I work with people is I take them back, because it's usually what's happened to us in our past that we think, like you were saying, you swept under the rug, it's gone, I've dealt with it, or it's not really a part of my life anymore. But oftentimes those are the things that are influencing us. And so with that, the way we think, the things that we believe, has a way of either heightening or taking our emotions to another level, and then our emotions take our thoughts to another level. So they feed off of each other. And oftentimes, especially as women too, when we're focused on, doing better, being better, having these lives, and especially when you're moms and you're trying to be that role model and, teaching your daughters or your sons, how to be better humans, I find that what happens is that women get in their own heads thinking, am I doing enough? Am I good enough? And knowing that their children are watching them, then they start to feel like they're a failure. If they fail, then they're showing that their kids what failure looks like, rather than looking at saying, this is what it looks like to fall down, and this is what it looks like to fall up, to get back up. So with emotional awareness, the way I look at it is looking at how you think and understanding it. A lot of it comes from the experiences that you have and how it made you feel. And when you're responding to trigger moments, usually it's our emotion, especially one that might have been the bigger emotion that we've always had, that's always happened, for example, around anxiety, and you get angry, or someone cuts you off in traffic, the first thing you get is angry, or somebody gives you feedback and you get angry, rather than looking at it and taking a step back and looking at it objectively. And so usually what happens is our emotion takes over, and it is what's responding. Even though our thoughts are there, our emotion will then say, well, I'm feeling a certain way. Your body gets into it, right? And then your heart and your mind are like going together saying, okay, well, I feel so bad. And you're like, yeah, I know why you feel so bad. And then you start actually playing off of each other, and you start allowing the negative thoughts to come into play. And then you allow them to become your way of, how you respond. So yeah, emotional awareness and mindset, the reason why I think they go together is because when we can understand how we think, and we can then look at how we react when certain things happen, and how we show up based on how we're feeling, and we take a step back and allow ourselves to look at it objectively, as Melanie was saying, like take a step back, and allow yourself to say, okay, maybe this is how I've often responded to something. But now I have the ability to say, I don't have to respond this way just because this is how it's made me feel in the past. And allowing yourself to then ask questions like, okay, well, why am I feeling this way? What's happened in my past that's brought this to the forefront every single time? I can give you an example. For me, it used to be around weight. Young girl, I was modeling, and back in my day, the industry was the skinnier, the better. Even the industry was saying that the clothes looked better on the runway when someone was super skinny. And so you saw a lot of young women getting really super skinny, and it became to the point where, the industry had to like be told, this isn't right, because what you're doing is you're raising a generation of young women to believe that if they don't look like this, then they're not good enough. And so my way of dealing with that was my emotions would always get into play. If someone mentioned that I either looked good, then I felt great. Oh, you look really good. But to me, looking good was I was super skinny. And I even developed an eating disorder because of it. If I gained a couple of pounds and someone said to me, oh, you look healthy, or you look like you put on a little bit of weight, automatically I went to feeling that I wasn't good enough. So I equated feelings of inadequacy if I wasn't skinny enough. And I also had equated feelings of not good enough if I gained some weight. And so I had to unpack this over the years. And I recognized I was always responding from that place when someone would say something. And I had to step back and say, why am I feeling this way? What is the real reason behind it? And I came to learn that it was because I didn't really love the person that was looking at me in my reflection. And that's why I talk a lot about self-love and how self-care is so important. Because when you could do what Melanie says she does, I go a little bit step further, Melanie. I have myself an intention statement, and I read it to myself with like, I'm so excited. And then, I said, you got this, girl. And I'll just give myself that high five, like you said. And that's a great practice. And the reason why is it gets that energy, that gratitude energy, but it is becoming emotionally aware around how you think. And that's why I think the two of them go together.
I love it. No, thank you so much, Leslie. And I think I'm starting to understand what emotional awareness is. It's really getting to know yourself and looking at yourself. So another thing that I like to do on my retreat is we talk about trigger transcendence. And so we have a list of what triggers us when other people do certain things like lean forward or speak loudly at us. So what triggers us? But I always think it's so important for us to look in the mirror and say, what am I doing to trigger the other person? So on the retreat, we do role play and we sort of act out scenarios. And everyone's so surprised when I look at them first. And so no wonder they're not getting what they want, or they're not getting the point across, because they're, the body language is sort of expressed in a way that the other person's being triggered. So emotional awareness and being aware of yourself, especially when we're having conversations with our loved ones or our kids, it's almost like we need to kind of imagine there's a mirror and like, what are we looking like what is our part in this as well, right? So
when you think about it, can I just say one last thing? When you think
yes.
about it, it's the little girl staring back at you in your reflection, the one that's growing up still within your own reflection, even though you might be a woman now. and you are starting to look at your flaws. You are starting to feel like, okay, I am not good enough, because you're looking around. And when you do face, because that, I think that's the hardest face to actually acknowledge, is your true self, because you are good enough, but oftentimes we don't feel that we are. And so emotionally, it shows up in ways that, and I'm sure Michele with her clients too, when they start to, like when she starts to do that deeper dive about how they're thinking, the way they set their mind to believe that this is their truth. And they're not asking that question, is it really true? And they're not allowing themselves to say, you know what, it isn't true, but right now it is true to me, and why? But instead, they're not going that deep. That's why it's like important to have women like this in this community asking those questions, because sometimes you can't see that, especially when you're looking at that little girl in the mirror and you're afraid. And so again, being emotional, in the beginning, when I said it's okay to be emotional, it's just finding ways not to live in that emotion, and being able to move forward and work through it. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in. Thanks.
Okay, wonderful. And we have Heather here. Heather and I are going to be on the Women in Finance Summit on Monday. And so I wanted to take this opportunity, because we do have a financial expert in the room. A lot of times women have trouble with money mindset, right? And so can you tell us some tips that would help women in this regard? How to be more confident regarding money? Oh, can you unmute, please?
Okay, it's definitely a topic that women battle with, and a lot of it is generationally ingrained. So, our mothers allowed our fathers or families to make decisions on money, and so did our grandmothers, and those are examples that we have. And it's not that that's a bad thing, but you need to be part of the conversation, right? And understanding that it's okay for you to ask, okay, what is the financial plan? What plans should we have? And so when I tell couples, sometimes when I see that there's a disparity in that conversation, is, why don't you make a money date with each other?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're forced to do nothing but talk about each other's desires about money and each other's goals for money. Because a lot of times our desires and goals and wants and needs are just different. Women historically will put their needs, desires, and wants on the back burner so that the kids can get the sneakers they want, so that, so-and-so can get the car that they want. Okay, I'll just drive there's so many things we want to give by our nature to our children and to our families that a lot of times we just keep putting it on the back burner. So in one of the books I read about is I talked about that. Stop putting your wants and needs, desires, and goals on the back burner, because inevitably you're hurting the entire family. You're not having the conversation not only with your spouse, but with yourself and with your children. So I encourage families to have open conversations. Not that you want to burden your children with your bills, but they need to understand the dynamic at the same time, right? And sometimes if you make them, especially when they're a little older, part of the conversation, they can better understand what their role and how they can fit into the narrative is, and they'll actually make better roles. So sometimes I tell women, if you're having a hard time having a conversation with your spouse or with your family, maybe make it a game or a challenge just to start that dialogue. Who can save the most for this month? We're going to do a family trip. Let's all decide together. We'll lay 3 out on the table. Here's the examples. Here what they cost. Which trip do we want to do? Okay, now you have this trip over top of everybody's head, and they all want to go to it. They all want to be part of it. They all want to save towards that goal. And so trying to find creative ways sometimes to start that conversation. But once you've had the conversation, once you're in the path, just fully understanding you have a right to know where the money's going, even if you're not the breadwinner. Although what I find very strange nowadays is a lot of women are the breadwinners, or they're the greater breadwinner, and they're still not having this conversation. And they're not fully aware of where their money goes. And the fact that women live longer than men, this is a very scary scenario. So you don't want to be in the position where something happens to your partner and you don't know how to pay the bills. You don't know what the financial plan is. You don't know that they took a second loan out on the house because they didn't feel they needed to come to you and ask your opinion. And now you don't know what to do about it. These are real life problems that come about from that lack of communication within that dynamic. And so the biggest thing I tell them is pie. Remember to eat pie. Participate, which means start taking an active role. Okay. Innovate, start thinking of creative ways to either start having that conversation, start creating extra streams of income, or other ways that you can contribute. And that will inevitably elevate you to a different level of either respect, a different level of money, or a different reality for your family generationally and across the board. So I say start there.
I love it. I think it's so important in general for families to be able to communicate, and especially in a relationship with your partner. We always assume what the other person's thinking, right? Or we sort of, based on a behavior, or again, triggers, we start thinking about it. We might start feeling resentful about something. So it's so easy to just voice exactly what we need, right? Just spit it out, say what you need, be honest, be open with the communication, and so many miscommunications would be avoided, and we wouldn't go into the place of, assuming what the other person did. And so I just wanted to tell you a quick story about me driving along, and how we sort of make these inferences about other drivers. And there was a Tesla driver who was just so annoying. And I thought that they were just trying to mess with me. And so it's like, what is wrong with this person? And so I drive next to the Tesla. It's this old lady who, she wasn't even paying attention to me. So a lot of times it's about us and what we're thinking, and it's not even about the other person, but we're assuming. So just wanted to mention that real quick. And let's move on to Michele. And so tell us some tips and ways people can quickly overcome some setbacks. Like what can you do when you've had a little setback, and how do you get back on track?
Yeah, a lot of people, we just don't talk about, just all over the world. It doesn't matter what culture or country you're in. We don't talk about how to handle setbacks. So I'm so glad we're having this conversation. And I know I just love our conversation together, because everything we're each saying, it ties in together. And so this will tie directly into what Melody spoke about a few minutes ago. And so one tip, the big banger, the big tip I want to give is you got to have an ACE. So think, okay, an ACE. So what that stands for is acknowledge, cause, and expand. And so I'll dive deep into that. So acknowledge your feelings during the setback and evaluate your thinking patterns that might keep that temporary event stuck in a negative thought pattern, right? Because what happens when something happens, we have a setback, it knocks us, it takes our breath away, it knocks us back 10 feet. But what happens after that? Our body responds to that. What we think about it in that moment. And so if we, some people just sweep it under and they just don't deal with it at all, but in our bodies, it's still buried in there, and it becomes blockages, which causes sickness, all kinds of things that manifest out of that. So really, acknowledging like, hey, this makes me feel so sad or so angry or whatever, unfair. What if something happened, somebody, attacked you verbally or did something just on purpose, right? We all get hurt, but what do we do with that? So acknowledging those feelings like, ooh, yeah, that did not feel right. So the second one is cause. So put the setback into perspective. And so ask the question, what is causing me to react in this situation? Because you acknowledge how you feel about it. You acknowledge that, okay, there is an issue. It did really happen to me. I'm not ignoring it. I'm not pretending that it didn't happen. Everything isn't cupcakes and rainbows. But practice rational and positive thinking to immediately realign yourself. And so, this tails on to what Melanie was talking about earlier. Once you get yourself back into alignment, it allows you to process things, and our brain is constantly sending signals to our body, and our body can go either, fight or flight, or, relaxed and happy. And okay, yeah, we can effectively take care of this situation as it comes, versus, oh my goodness, I'm stuck in this broken record in my mind and it's spinning. I don't know what to do. And then your body's going, okay, I'm just going to stay in this fight or flight mode because you're not telling me what to do. And it's so interesting when Melly was talking about the neural aspect of it, and really all of you touched on it. It's just so amazing how our emotions relate to that, even what Leslie was diving into. So the way we feel about our situation comes from our perception of it. So if we're unreasonably hard on ourselves, it can lead to jumping to the wrong conclusions and cloud our thoughts around people's motives. So then you start thinking, oh, well, and they could maybe, they didn't mean to say those words to you, but it triggered you into this frame of mind to where it brought you back, kind of like what we were talking about. It brought you back to an instance in your childhood or a previous traumatic event. And now it's just kind of going on this spiral effect. And so negative thinking damages our confidence, performance, and paralyzes our minds. And it's very interesting how, everyone's heard the term analysis paralysis, right? It's crazy how negative thinking, like you take a negative thought and it enters into your thought process, your brain, and then your brain processes all of these things, and it recalls, it goes through your brain, and it just recalls different instances and how it just triggers something else, or it brings you back to this or that. And so that's how it creates this, coping mechanism. And our brain is like, okay, I'm just going to freeze and paralyze because I don't know what to do with this. So practicing awareness or mindfulness helps us quickly combat the setback so we can move on from it versus unpacking there. And I think that's the important thing. A lot of people don't really know what to do with it, is they unpack there. Instead of just acknowledging it and closing up the suitcase, switching it out for a lighter one, they keep that heavy suitcase and they carry it with them wherever they go and whoever they're with, into relationships, into their parenting, into their marriages. It doesn't matter. And so once we become aware of our thought process and we're mindful, and just like with Melanie said earlier, just small affirmations, just these small adjustments. Something I struggled with when I was younger is I'm beautiful. And I literally have a sticker in front, like where I brush my teeth, and it says, "You're beautiful." That's it. It's no fancy thing. It just has a pretty font. It just says, "You're beautiful." And so the days that I struggle with that, or somebody says something, or I take it a certain way, and I bring myself back there mentally, because we're all human. Even though a lot of us are mindset coaches, we still have the same challenges. But the difference is we have the tools to quickly reroute ourselves and align ourselves to where we need to be. So the last one, is expand your view of success and build your resilience. So that goes directly with having an unstoppable mindset. So the situation you're facing is not a reflection of your overall value as a person or how you make wise decisions. So reframe your thoughts. Instead of focusing on the failure or setback, say, okay, I tried it. It didn't work this time, but here's what I'll do. I'll readjust XYZ or whatever it is and try again. And so when we do that, it immediately sends a different signal to our brain, and then our bodies react to it. Like, I've been journaling the last 3 months about how my body reacts. And I've noticed a change in my blood pressure, my blood sugar, like everything is just, it's amazing how our bodies are directly related to our brain signals and what we tell ourselves. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michele. That's amazing. And so we are running out of time now. So I wanted to ask one final really quick question to Melanie in Australia. So, I mean, there's so much pressure on women to be perfect, to be productive, you know, so much, we're always the ones taking care of everyone else. So where does self-compassion come in?
Yeah, look, I think to sort of bring it all together, everything we've talked about has that synergy. Yeah, it's absolutely about the self-compassion and the gratitude, using that as your protective factor. So, you know, when you begin to understand and you're doing some of this work, even if it's a small amount, because we can often feel really overwhelmed because we want to fix something. And it actually, the self-compassion starts with, I actually don't need fixing. Yeah, I'm just going to go and do some further exploration. So, you know, the emotional awareness that Leslie was talking about, that's just simply going on a journey with yourself, where you're able to really tune in, because I think we're just so driven to be in hustle and grind. And so when we think about our lives, we've lost skills such as, resting. Yeah, because in fact, when we think we might be resting and we're actually scrolling, and that scrolling is actually a complete and utter mind and brain stimulation. And there's a whole lot of psychology and science behind that, you know, is maybe not being used for good. I won't say evil, it's got some good things, but it can really trip us up, right? And so even just acknowledging that. But the one thing that I think really pops into my mind with that question, Martina, is around women taking the time to define what success really means to them. Not what we've been told success is, not what we have picked up along the way from the external validation. When Leslie was talking about, you know, what the industry said was, you know, acceptable in terms of bodies, it's really about saying, what does that look like for me? And I think fundamentally what we understand is that, you know, not to sort of bring it down a little bit, but when we get to the end of life, what we're not doing is standing up and saying, I wish I'd spent more time in the office. I wish I'd spent more time making money. Yeah, what we're talking about is the dash that exists between the year we were born and the year that we die. And it's about the impact and the energy and, you know, how we've made others feel, and along the way, how we've made ourselves feel. And so for me, when I look and work with all of these women, and one of the things that really comes out as a common thread is I've been working and doing this thing for so long, I'm stuck in this goofy loop, and I actually think maybe it was somebody else's definition of success. And P.S., I'm exhausted. And, you know, and I think, you know, I'd really like to say that you can find a version of success alignment. And that is about establishing that really compassionate relationship with yourself.
I love it. That's so important. And that was such a nice closing statement, if you will. So She Rises Studios is a company founded by two women, Hannah Olivos and Adriana Luna Carlos, and Heather's part of the team, and Nicole, and it's just wonderful. I'm a firm believer in women supporting women, so I really love the organization. One of my best-selling books was Becoming an Unstoppable Woman in Finance. Heather was in there as well. And so this year we were asked to be on the She Rises Studios SRS Collective Leadership Team. And it's really been a true honor. We have about 40 women. We meet every week. We have summits. The next one is Monday, Women in Finance, 12 to 2 p.m. PST. And Sue Herrera from CNBC is going to be there as well. And then we have other virtual summits. We have a live summit in Miami coming up in May. We have one in New York City in August. And then there's one, I believe, in Las Vegas later on in the year, and possibly others. But if you ever see anything that's coming out or that I'm or one of us is posting about She Rises Studios, it's definitely worth listening to and reading. And this was amazing. I mean, I took a page of notes. So what I'm going to suggest when I write about this post is, ladies, I hope that you've been taking notes because this was amazing. It's really been an honor to have Heather Stokes here with me, Leslie Gaudet, Michele Meza, and Melanie Greenhaw. And I thank you so much for being on our roundtable for extreme confidence and having an ironclad mindset. And I think we really covered a lot of great topics with real tools that people can take away from this conversation. So thank you. Let me stop recording.